The courtroom went silent the second Sandy Adams stepped behind the bench. Ryan Adams barely looked up at first. He was leaning toward his attorney, whispering something under his breath with the confidence of a man who still thought he could talk his way out of anything. Then he saw her. His face drained instantly. "No," he muttered. Their mother suddenly jerked upright in the gallery, so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Oh my God. Their father grabbed her wrist hard before she could say another word. "Sit down," he hissed. Sandy noticed every second of it. But her expression never changed. The bailiff called the room to order while Ryan stared at her like he'd just seen a ghost walk through the courtroom doors. 6 years earlier, he'd watched her get dragged into a police car in handcuffs. Now she was the judge deciding whether he would walk into prison. Ryan swallowed hard. "You knew." Sandy ignored him completely. She sat down slowly, opened the case file in front of her, and adjusted her glasses with steady hands. But inside her head, she could still hear the sound of cameras flashing outside the family business. Still see employees staring, while officers shoved her against the hood of a cruiser. Still hear Ryan's calm voice saying, she had access to everything. Back then, nobody questioned him. Not the police. Not the reporters. Not even their parents. Sandy looked down at the financial exhibits spread across the file. The same last name appeared over and over again across the documents. Adams. 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 6 years ago, that name destroyed her life. Now it was about to destroy his. Ryan shifted nervously at the defense table while his attorney started speaking about sentencing recommendations and financial misconduct charges. But Ryan wasn't listening anymore. Because Sandy was no longer the younger sister he could manipulate inside a family office. She was Judge Sandy Adams. And for the first time in his life, Ryan Adams looked afraid. The memory hit her hard anyway. 2 nights in jail. Fingerprint ink still stuck under her nails. A stained holding cell blanket wrapped around her shoulders while another woman asked quietly, "What they get you for?" "Stealing," Sandy had whispered. Except she hadn't stolen anything. Not $1. But local headlines didn't care about that. Family bookkeeper accused of stealing $40,000 from own parents. Former coworkers posted gossip online before charges were even formally filed. People she'd known for years suddenly stopped answering her calls. And the worst part wasn't the jail cell. It was her father. Sandy could still remember standing in the interrogation room after her release, crying while her father refused to even sit down across from her. "Dad, please," she'd begged. "You know I would never do this." His answer came instantly. Ryan would never lie about something this serious. That sentence changed everything. Not because police believed Ryan. Because her family did. Back in the courtroom, Sandy turned another page inside the file. Then she stopped. One financial exhibit caught her attention immediately. A transfer authorization timestamp. Her employee credentials. Ryan's approval signature, 3 minutes later. Sandy slowly looked up. And in that exact moment, she realized something terrifying. Ryan still thought she only knew about the missing $40,000. He had no idea she'd already uncovered the rest. Sandy stood across the street from her parents' house, holding a single suitcase. The porch light was on, but nobody opened the door. She stared at the new deadbolt installed above the handle, trying to process what she was seeing. Then the curtain near the front window shifted slightly. Her mother was inside, watching. "Mom," Sandy called softly. No answer. A few seconds later, the front door cracked open just enough for her mother to slide another bag onto the porch. Clothes. A winter coat. Her laptop charger. things packed quickly by someone trying not to think too hard. Her mother still wouldn't look at her. "Mom, please, can we just talk?" The door shut quietly. The lock clicked. Sandy stood there frozen, while cold wind pushed leaves across the driveway. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Ryan. He walked toward her slowly with both hands in his pockets like this was some uncomfortable family misunderstanding instead of a betrayal that had destroyed her life. "You shouldn't have come here tonight," he said quietly. Sandy stared at him. "You know I didn't take that money." Ryan sighed like he was exhausted. "If you admit it now, Dad might calm down." That was the moment something shifted. Not anger. Not panic. Recognition. Ryan wasn't confused. He wasn't trying to understand what happened. He was trying to force a confession out of her. Sandy took a slow step closer. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm trying to help you." "You called the police. You had access to the accounts." "So did you." For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Sandy noticed it. Fear. Not guilt. Fear. Ryan looked nervous for the first time since her arrest. Sandy's mind immediately started replaying years of moments she'd ignored before. Ryan refusing independent audits. Ryan snapping at investors whenever they asked detailed financial questions. Money disappearing from vendor accounts and always getting blamed on bookkeeping delays. Meanwhile, Sandy handled payroll, taxes, invoices, everything, and Ryan still got treated like the genius son keeping the business alive. "I kept records," Sandy said carefully. Ryan looked up immediately. "I can prove where the money actually went." His expression changed so fast it almost made her step backward. "Did you copy anything?" he asked quietly, "before the police took your laptop?" The question hit Sandy like ice water. "Not to." "Are you okay?" "Not to." "Why would someone frame you?" "Only." "What evidence do you still have?" Ryan realized instantly he'd said too much. He backed away a step. "Forget it, none of this matters anymore." Then he turned and walked back toward the house. But Sandy kept staring after him. Because innocent people didn't ask questions like that. That night, sitting inside a cheap motel room paid for with the last money in her checking account, Sandy made a call she almost didn't make. Marcus Lee, a former coworker from the finance department. He answered on the third ring. "Sandy." "You know something," she said immediately. Silence. Then Marcus lowered his voice. "The night before your arrest, Ryan deleted several financial files from the server." Sandy sat upright instantly. "What files?" "I copied part of the logs. I didn't trust what was happening." "Marcus." "Send them to me." "I can't do that over company email." "Then text me, anything." Marcus hesitated. Then suddenly his voice changed. "Wait." A loud noise sounded somewhere near him. "What's going on?" Sandy asked. Another pause. Then the line went dead. Sandy pulled the phone away slowly. 3 seconds later, a new message appeared on her screen from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions before you make this worse." 3 months later, Sandy sat alone in the back row of a crowded courtroom while prosecutors quietly dismantled the case against her. The state is moving to dismiss all charges due to insufficient evidence. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement that her entire life had collapsed because of a lie. The judge signed the dismissal paperwork in less than 30 seconds. Around Sandy, people immediately started gathering their things like the hearing meant nothing. But to her, everything had already been destroyed. Outside the courthouse, reporters still waited anyway. Cameras turned toward her the second she stepped through the doors. "Sandy, did your family know the charges were being dropped? Do you plan to sue? Do you still deny taking the money?" She kept walking. One photographer actually jogged backward in front of her to keep taking pictures. Then another voice cut through the noise. "We're just grateful this misunderstanding is over." "Ryan." Sandy stopped cold. Her brother stood near the courthouse, stairs beside their parents, wearing a dark suit and a perfectly rehearsed expression of concern. Their father nodded grimly beside him, while their mother avoided eye contact again. Ryan even placed a hand on Sandy's shoulder for the cameras. The move was so calculated, it made her stomach turn. "Our family been through a lot," he told reporters, "but we're trying to move forward together." Sandy pulled away from him immediately. She looked directly at her father. "You know he's lying." His face hardened instantly. "Not here." "I found loan records," Sandy pressed. "Ryan borrowed money against the business before I was arrested." Ryan's eyes flickered toward her for half a second. "There are transfers that overlap with the missing funds," Sandy continued. "You need to look at the accounts yourself." Her father suddenly exploded. "You're still trying to blame your brother for your mistakes." People nearby turned toward them immediately. Sandy looked at her mother desperately. "Mom." But her mother stayed silent. Not one word. That silence hurt more than the yelling. Ryan stepped closer carefully, lowering his voice like he was trying to calm an unstable person. "You need help, Sandy." That was the moment she understood the truth. Ryan had already won. Not legally. Socially. Everyone believed him. And nobody wanted the story complicated now that she'd already been labeled the thief. So Sandy walked away. Not dramatically. Not angrily. She just turned around and left her family standing on the courthouse steps. Over the next 6 years, her entire life changed. She worked nights reviewing case files for a law office while finishing law school during the day. She rented tiny apartments, ate cheap microwave meals, stayed quiet every time people searched her name online, and found old headlines about theft charges. And eventually, slowly, she rebuilt herself. By 34, Sandy Adams was a judge. Fair, respected, controlled. Most people in her courtroom had no idea what her last name once cost her. Then one Thursday morning, a clerk handed her a new federal fraud case assignment. "High-profile financial prosecution," the clerk explained. "A lot of media attention." Sandy opened the file casually, then froze. Defendant, Ryan Adams. Every sound in the room seemed to disappear. Her pulse started hammering instantly. She flipped to the witness list, and her breath caught completely. Marcus Lee. The coworker who vanished the night their family business collapsed. Sandy turned another page quickly, then another, until she reached the forensic accounting summary attached near the back. Her eyes locked onto one paragraph. Remote access logs. Transfer authorizations. Credential duplication. Evidence directly connecting Ryan to the exact money she'd been accused of stealing 6 years earlier. Sandy stared at the page in silence, then slowly closed the file. Because for the first time, she wasn't the defendant anymore. The conference room was completely silent except for the sound of paper turning. Sandy sat at the end of the long table during the closed pretrial review, while federal attorneys organized years of financial evidence across the surface in front of her. Transfer records, audit summaries, recovered server logs. Ryan sat beside his attorney looking calmer than he had during the public hearings, but Sandy noticed something important immediately. He still wouldn't look directly at her. One of the prosecutors finally cleared his throat. "Your Honor, given the family connection, we understand if you wish to recuse yourself." For a moment, Sandy said nothing. Part of her wanted to walk away from the case completely. Not because Ryan deserved protection, because she knew exactly what he was capable of. Another judge had privately warned her earlier that morning. Your history doesn't protect him from the evidence, he'd said, and stepping aside won't change what he did. Now, staring at the documents spread across the table, Sandy finally understood how carefully Ryan had planned everything. Her employee credentials had been accessed remotely late at night from a second device. 3 minutes later, Ryan's executive authorization approved the transfers. Deleted accounting files had been recovered from archived backup servers. And the missing audit reports Ryan claimed never existed had existed the entire time. The door opened suddenly. Marcus Lee walked inside. Ryan visibly stiffened. Marcus looked older now, nervous, exhausted, but this time he sat down anyway. The prosecutor asked the first question carefully. "Mr. Lee, why did you disappear 6 years ago?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Because Ryan threatened me." Ryan immediately leaned forward. "That's not true." Marcus ignored him. "He told me if I spoke to investigators, he'd destroy me financially. Said nobody would believe me over family." Sandy watched Ryan closely. For the first time since the case began, his confidence cracked. Marcus continued quietly. "The auditors were already looking into missing money before Sandy got arrested." Ryan panicked. He needed someone else blamed before they found the accounts. The room went still. Every clue suddenly connected perfectly. The fake transfers, the deleted files, the rushed police report signed by their father. Ryan hadn't framed Sandy to steal $40,000. He framed her because she was the fastest way to hide years of fraud. Federal investigators later discovered millions missing from investor accounts, tied to Ryan's later companies. The family business collapse had only been the beginning. During recess, Ryan finally approached Sandy near the hallway outside Chambers. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Ryan quietly asked, "Are you really going to do this to your own brother?" Sandy looked at him steadily. "You already did it to your sister." Ryan's face changed instantly. Because he finally understood something terrifying. She knew everything now. Not suspicions. Not guesses. Everything. A bailiff opened the courtroom doors again. "All rise." Ryan stepped back slowly, while Sandy walked past him without another word. The courtroom filled as she returned to the bench. Reporters shifted forward. Attorneys stood. Ryan remained frozen beside the defense table. Sandy opened the sentencing folder carefully, then looked directly at him for the first time all day. "Mr. Adams," she said calmly, "please rise." Ryan stood slowly. The entire courtroom watched him. 6 years earlier, he'd stood outside a police car while Sandy was pushed into the back seat in handcuffs. Now deputies stood only a few feet away from him instead. Sandy looked down briefly at the sentencing papers before speaking. Her voice stayed calm, controlled, professional. "Over the course of several years," she began, "the defendant engaged in repeated acts of financial fraud, falsification of business records, investor theft, and witness intimidation." Ryan stared straight ahead. "The court has reviewed extensive forensic accounting evidence, recovered server archives, sworn testimony, and financial transfer records directly linking the defendant to the movement and concealment of stolen funds." Nobody in the courtroom moved. Even the reporters stopped typing. Sandy continued. "These actions were not isolated mistakes. They reflected a deliberate pattern of manipulation, abuse of trust, and calculated harm toward innocent individuals for personal protection and financial gain." At the defense table, Ryan finally lowered his eyes. In the gallery, their mother quietly pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. Their father sat completely still beside her, pale and rigid. Sandy never once mentioned their family relationship directly. She didn't have to. Every word already landed exactly where it needed to. "The evidence further established," Sandy said, That financial records were intentionally altered using duplicated employee credentials belonging to another individual inside the original family business. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Recovered server backups later confirmed deleted audit files and unauthorized transfer approvals connected directly to the defendant. Their father slowly looked toward Ryan. For the first time since the hearing began, real confusion appeared on his face. Not denial. Realization. Sandy continued speaking. The court also recognizes testimony establishing that false accusations were used to redirect suspicion away from ongoing embezzlement activity shortly before external auditors began reviewing company finances. Their mother suddenly broke down, crying quietly in the gallery. Because now she understood too. Ryan didn't just lie. He sacrificed someone else deliberately. And the person he sacrificed was sitting above him on the bench. Sandy finally looked directly at Ryan again. Do you have anything further to say before sentencing? For several seconds, Ryan said nothing. Then he gave a weak, humorless laugh. I never thought they'd believe it that easily. The courtroom went completely silent. Their father's face collapsed instantly. Like the last 6 years had just replayed inside his head all at once. The arrest report. His signature. The detectives asking whether he wanted to proceed with charges against his own daughter. And him saying yes. Ryan looked down at the floor afterward, saying nothing else. Sandy folded her hands together calmly. This court sentences the defendant to 12 years in federal prison. A sharp gasp escaped somewhere behind the gallery. Additionally, Sandy continued, the defendant will remain financially liable in pending civil actions connected to investor losses and fraudulent business activity. Deputies immediately stepped forward. Ryan didn't resist when they placed him in restraints. But as they turned him toward the side exit reserved for convicted prisoners, he finally glanced back toward Sandy one last time. She didn't react. Not angrily. Not triumphantly. Just calmly. The same calm he never allowed her to have 6 years earlier. Outside the courthouse, cameras crowded the front steps again. Except this time, they weren't chasing Sandy as a criminal. They were waiting for her statement as the judge who sentenced one. News outlets spent the next several weeks publicly revisiting her wrongful arrest. Legal analysts discussed how the original theft accusations collapsed once federal investigators uncovered Ryan's fraud history. Eventually, the state formally cleared Sandy's record entirely. No charges. No wrongdoing. Nothing left attached to her name except the truth. As Sandy exited the courthouse that evening, she heard hurried footsteps behind her. Her mother. Sandy, wait. Sandy stopped, but didn't turn around immediately. When she finally did, her mother was crying openly now. We thought Ryan needed us more, she whispered. Sandy held her gaze for a long moment. Then answered honestly. No, you just trusted him more. Her mother broke completely after hearing it said out loud. A few feet behind her, their father stood silently near the courthouse steps. He never attempted an excuse. Never defended himself. He simply lowered his eyes. Because there was nothing left to say anymore. The daughter he refused to believe had rebuilt her life without any of them. And the son he protected had destroyed everything they had left. Sandy walked away calmly as courthouse lights flickered across the street around her. Behind her, Ryan disappeared through the same secured side entrance once used to transport her into custody years earlier. But this time was different. This time, the truth walked beside her instead of shame. And for the first time in 6 years, Sandy no longer felt like the girl begging someone to believe her. 6 years earlier, they watched her walk into a jail cell alone. This time, she watched him walk into one himself.